Hi, welcome to Something Simple and Light with Tolu Alao. In this podcast, we talk about three key areas: process improvements, manufacturing excellence, data analytics, and visualization. The goal of this podcast is to discuss practical ways to improve your operations day in, day out. Wow, there's so much to cover in these episodes, and I really hope that you pick one or two things that you can apply in your operations immediately. Fantastic. Let's jump into today's discussion. Okay, fantastic. So, in today's episode of Something Simple and Light, we're going to be talking about continuous flow, right? And continuous flow is such an important discussion when you look at process improvements, right? It's something that has a lot of bearing on optimization of your process flow and making sure that you're able to, maximize your process as much as possible, right? Having that continuous flow. So let's just jump right into this discussion quickly. So you'll see that here we have an example of a flow that is not continuous, right? And what this means is that you have what is called, you can also call this a batch flow, right? So you work in batches. So in this particular example, I have, a container here with a tap that fits into a bucket, right? So this is one batch. So I make a complete batch. So let's assume that this is some beverage that I produce, right? And I mix my beverage right here. I make one batch and then that is transferred into a bucket. You can see that this already allows opportunities for leakages, right? So we're having waste that are dripping off the floor. So the bucket is filled, right? And then this bucket is now transferred using this cup. So the content of this bucket is, yeah, it looks like, this doesn't make any sense because why are we going through all this stress just to fill in this bottle, right? But that's how some of our processes are. They are, very inefficient like this. And so you're using a cup, right, to feed into this bath, right? And then from here, you're able to, use that tap to feed into another container, right? This is another container, and then that is put into this funnel. And then, so each of this is a batch that is being transferred, right? And there we've talked about the different types of waste, but you can already see a number of waste here. For instance, there will have to be some form of waiting because while I'm making this batch, right, nothing is happening here. And then once I'm done with this batch, I transfer to the next batch. This guy is also waiting, for his own. And then you have, waiting time. So there'll be times for waiting. There'll also be, defects. So for instance, in terms of mixing, because I am doing them, one after the other, I might end up, having some inconsistency, right, in what is being produced in these batches. Another issue here too, in terms of type of waste is that there's some form of over processing here because I'm having to take it through this process, take it to another step, which is not really adding value to the customer, right? So we are having more steps than we actually need, right, as a result of this, not having that continuous flow. Now look at what continuous flow, this is one very good example. So you have a situation where I have one batch that is made here, right? And then I have a piping system that connects this directly to my endpoint, right? Which is this bottle. Look at the steps that we had to go through from this point. We had one step here, we had another step here, we had another step here, and then four steps. But here we're just saying, right from here, we're just, having one major step that connects this to the bottle. So this is going to continuously flow into the bottle, right? It's continuously flowing. And what this means is that I'm having minimal or little batches. So I don't have, a batch here, I have another batch here, and then I'm doing it one after the other, right? So once I make this large volume, I can continuously flow my process, right? One drop at a time. This happens very fast, right? But it's like having one drop at a time going past, this piping system into all of this, right? I just wanted to make this as practical, as possible for you to understand this. So what you want to do for your process is to, lean more towards having a continuous flow, right? You want your process to flow continuously. And this is how, the automation industry, progressed. And this was one of the mindsets that really transformed the automobile industry, where you had, that one piece flow. So you had an assembly line, right? Let me just draw an assembly line. And you had people doing one piece at a time. So somebody is fixing the lights, right? Somebody is fixing the dashboard in the next process. Somebody is fixing the tires. And, one person is doing, so each person has one part, one value that they're adding to that assembly, to that car as it's moving, versus just parking the car here and then I want everybody to work on the car. So maybe one person has to fix most of this thing. While the person is fixing, this guy is waiting because until he's done with all the things he has to fix, right, he cannot send it to the next person. But what you want is to have, a situation where you're just doing one or just a very few thing and then passing it to the next process, and then you have it continuously flowing versus accumulating and having batches, right? That's the idea. So let's see what we have here. So we say operations where work in process smoothly flows from the system with minimal, right? And that's the key word, with minimal or no buffers between steps. That's what continuous flow is, right? And there are a lot of advantages to this. There are no waiting, you are not having excess inventory, right? Because that's another issue with this no continuous flow. So because I have all these steps, right, I'm going to, produce more than I need here. And then I hope that as this guy is transferring, it takes only part of it. And then I have something left here, right? And then this is moved here. So there's bound to be, excess inventory without a continuous flow. So that's something you also want to avoid. Developing a continuous flow eliminates many forms of waste, right? And this is what we've talked about in detail here. So excess inventory, waiting time, transport, right, and over processing. These are things that you can eliminate with continuous flow. All right, fantastic. Let me just take one more example as we wrap up this conversation on continuous flow. So this is also another example, and I'm just going to do two quick examples here. So the first one we have here is when you don't have continuous flow. So again, you see that I have a large batch size, right? So this person works on all of this, right? And until that batch is complete before he sends to station two, right? So let's say this is how many: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, right? So he's doing 10, and then when he's done with 10, he sends it to station 2. Station 2 adds his own value to those 10. And then now again, look at why this guy is doing the 10. This guy is waiting, right? And then he has to finish that 10 before he sends to the next guy. And then the next guy does that 10 and then sends it for inspection, right? And then this person inspects the 10 of them versus a continuous flow or a one piece flow. So this is also called, let me just write this here, a one piece flow, right? So versus this where we are working on one, immediately I'm done with one, I send that one to the next person. I finish this, immediately it's done with it, you send it to the next person, and then it's gone for inspection. So this is continuously flowing. So you see that people always, have something to do because the batch size is one, right? So you want to, have as little batch size as possible. So let me say little batch size as possible, right? And this is something very, very critical for improving your process. All right, so let's move to another example here. This is pizza. I like using food examples, but again, rather than working in batches, you want to work continuously, right? You want to have continuous flow. So in this particular example, I have a batch size of 3, right? So I do 3 pizzas, right? I roll it, I add my material. So whether it's flour, what milk, sugar, whatever you use for your own pizza, right? And then you move to the next step where you're putting your toppings, right? Your pepperoni or whatever you want to put on top of your pizza. And then when I'm done with that, I send it to, the next stage, right? Versus, doing one, sending the one to the next stage, and then it moves to the next stage, then I'm doing the next one, right? And then you can have each person focused on doing one part. So one person is doing this, another person is doing this, and then someone else is doing this. All right, fantastic. I hope you've been able to pick something from the idea of continuous flow. Fantastic. Fantastic. I trust you've been able to pick something from today's episode, and I look forward to hearing about your success. For more content like this and to keep in touch, you can follow me on LinkedIn at Tolu Alao. You can also subscribe and follow me on YouTube, also at Tolu Alao. Until next time, just give me something simple and light.